of the session here. If we think about the way that PrPro works, it works like Photoshop in that you have a bottom layer of video, and then you have a top layer of video. And if you're looking at the video, you're looking down on it. And so whatever's on top is what you'll see. And so we've done things like crossfading so that the top video sort of fades out in terms of opacity. But what would happen if we were to crop part of the top one, and we would see a portion of the top and all of the bottom? That's the general idea of a mask, is where you are only seeing a very small portion, or actually a very specific portion of the top video. And as you're looking down on it, what you're seeing is a combination. It's a composite of two different things. Now, for this to look, I guess, natural, it takes work. It takes planning, and it takes some patience, because planning, your video needs to be compatible. The lighting needs to be relatively the same if you want it to look natural. The perspective of the camera needs to be the same. For instance, you don't want to shoot one of the videos where you're aiming down and the other one where you're aiming up. When you combine them together, there'll be these completely different perspectives, and it will throw the viewer off. You can do that, of course. It won't look natural, though. So if your intent is to fool the viewer or to create an illusion that isn't so obvious, then you'll want to pay attention to those things. It also takes patience, because there's a lot of fine tuning that you'll want to be able to do in Premiere, depending on the complexity of your masking, depending on the complexity of the thing that you're doing. And so it can get really sort of, I guess, complex very quickly, even though the technique itself is pretty simple. So I'm going to show you a couple of things today, and then I'm going to show you some more things next week so that we can step into this, so that it doesn't create this kerfuffle of too much information and such. There's a lot of doors this opens up for you once you understand the concept of creating these sort of mask layers. We create masks in a lot of different ways. The way we're going to do it here is effectively a kind of creative cropping of layers. You can also, it is masking, but you're not using like edges. You're deciding to eliminate color, certain colors from your video in order to do composites. And that's called chroma keying, which we'll show you next week as well. On Wednesday, in fact, we'll do some video work in our studio all together. And then we'll use that video to do what's called chroma keying, which is another sort of version of this masking and that type of thing. So this project, the project when we actually formally demonstrate, it's going to be like technical things. I'm going to have you, it's not going to be story-based. I'm going to have you have some very specific scenarios that you collect, and then we're going to combine them together using some very particular techniques so that you create this sort of illusion, so that you can work through the technical process. And then afterward, you'll be able to decide how you want to incorporate it into your work. Today, I'm going to show you two very simple techniques, and then I'm going to show you what I do with masks, which is completely different than the things I'm going to show that I'm going to ask you to do. Completely different than anything that I'm going to have you guys do. I use masks in very complex ways, and I use masks so that you're not really even knowing that I'm using masks. So I do a lot of animation and a lot of kind of compositing, and it's very abstract. So I'll show you that just to show you how complex the image can look once you get into some really layered things. So let me go ahead and share screen here. And one moment here, window, there we go. And I will, where's my screen demo? Hang on. Go we go, share screen. And we're going to share desktop number 1. And there we go. Everybody can see my screen, correct? Yep. Because I can't see you because my screen is completely turned off. Awesome. Okay, great. All right. So once I get this set, I'm having to set this up very particularly so that it'll work. I'm not going to be able to see you once I go off here. So if you have questions, you're going to need to unmute and ask. You can't use the chat. All right. Okay. So you should be seeing my PrPro window. One person, just give me a thumbs up. So that way I'll know you're seeing my PrPro window. Great. Thank you, Maxine. Awesome. Okay. So what I have here is going to be the most basic sort of idea of masking that we can do. I have on this timeline 2 pieces of video. I have here, which is just a piece of video that has a area that I know that I'm going to use to drop in another image. In other words, I walked around my house and I was thinking, what do I do for this demo? Oh, I can do like something outside of a window. So I set this up so that I would be able to drop something into this window here. And so I deliberately framed everything up so that I could be able to do that. So I have that piece of footage that I shot. The other piece of footage, I decided to go and do something on both of these demos that are actually not natural looking, so that you'll see definitely what it is. If I did it very, very naturally, it sometimes is more difficult to understand the techniques, but I'm doing this with using stuff that looks really kind of maybe surreal and bizarre, so that you'll see definitely what the masking is and what it does. So I have that, and then underneath it I have that water footage that I had used before just for that. And that is what I'm going to effectively make it look like it's outside my window. So make it look like I'm effectively like outside my window is this underwater person floating or whatnot. So, so I have these 2 pieces of footage. The main idea is to be able to see that footage into here. So here's the concept as I had talked about it before. You have 2 layers of video. I have this top layer here, which is the video you're seeing. You're seeing there's me sitting at the, on the chair, and I'm drinking a tea, and that's the video. And then underneath it is the footage that I want to see in the window. So that's the footage that should appear here. So what I have to do is I need to be able to cut a window out here. I need to be able to basically make just this window portion transparent. I need to make it so that I can see through it and it alone to what's below it. And that would be this footage. So it's just like any other thing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that footage, and it brings it up into the viewer. Or the source window, where we're able to do all the stuff we've been doing before, even adjust opacity. So up till now, we can adjust opacity. We've done it for a lot of different reasons. We've mainly been doing it to fade things in and fade things out, where we've been clicking on points and making opacity 0 to fade the video in and fade the video out. If I control it with 0 opacity, you'll see I just sort of turn off the opacity of that video altogether. So what I want to do is I want to control a window in that. So it's still opacity that I'm working with. And if you guys have been curious, I don't know if any of you have been curious enough to be looking at these 3 little icons. If you hover over them, you'll see they have different readings of them. One says create an ellipse mask. The other says create a 4-point polygon mask. And the other is do a free draw thing. We won't do the free draw. We'll just do, since this is a square, I'll be demonstrating the 4-point mask. So I'm going to select that. Oops. And once I select that, now I am going to identify what I want to see, right? I want the mask to be just in the window here. So if you see here, I have this visor, I have this square, and I grab hold of it, and I'm going to start moving it. I'm sorry? Did somebody have a question? No? Oh, okay. So I'm going to start moving it generally in the space of where the window is, because I know I want the person floating there to appear in the window. So I'm applying the mask to the top video footage, which is the video footage of me sitting in a chair drinking tea. Okay, so what I've done here is I have encircled a mask around that. And now what I need to do is, because at this point, what it's saying is the mask is what I want to include. And instead, I'm going to say I want to exclude it. So by clicking the invert button here, what it did is it said, oh, instead of making the inside the smaller cube the thing you do see, it's inside the smaller cube is the thing you don't see. So now I can make even more sort of finer sort of adjustments to the mask by pulling it up and making adjustments. You can see I can even bring the mask up off the video itself. The viewer is not going to ever see that. The person watching the video is not going to see that. Now, I deliberately made a mistake here. I actually did something here that is not a good idea. And that is, I'll kind of move this out of the way. And that is these flowers. So I originally didn't have these flowers in there, but then I thought to myself, I want to highlight the idea that if you have randomly shaped objects that you're trying to mask around, it makes it more challenging and more difficult. It's not impossible, of course, because we have all kinds of things, but you can see here, if it wasn't there, I could just square this up geometrically on geometry, just using the 4 points, square it up right to the window, and I'd be done, or at least I'd be very close. However, with these flowers, if you guys are able to see it, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. With these flowers there, it breaks the illusion completely. It makes it so that it doesn't look very good at all. It totally ruins the illusion, right? Because you can see that it's something over the top of those flowers. I can fix that, which I will a little bit, in a little bit. But that's pretty much all there is to it, to do a mask. Like I said, it's very simple, especially if you're doing a technique like this. So this is what it would end up looking like, is you'd have some video footage, you'd have one going on, and this, the woman floating in the water is effectively underneath the video of me sitting there with tea. However, I've cut a hole in the video of me where that window is, and so you're seeing through that little hole into where the video is. So that's pretty much what you're seeing. Now, there are a couple of tweaks that you can do to this. If we come back up here to the basic mask, because when I selected this square, suddenly I got all of the features of a mask. You'll see that there's some defaults that happen here. And the one I've already used is this invert. Invert made it so that when I clicked on it, instead of it being the area that I've identified as being what I want, it's the area I identified as being what I don't want. So that created the hole rather than the patch. Up here is something called feathering. And feathering is where I can increase it. And what it does is it softens the edges of the mask. And you can see what it's doing here. It kind of creates this sort of soft, ghostly edge to the clip. Now, this can be a benefit if I were trying to blend something, and it kind of gives you a really interesting look, almost as if I'm projecting something onto the wall there. You can see it literally starts to hover over the other parts of the video. There's all sorts of possibilities that you can start to take advantage of when you do this. You can see once the video is gone now, what that does. You can see that it sort of blends itself. See how soft that is. When I turn the feathering down to 0, you see it's just a hard edge. When I turn the feathering up, it becomes a soft edge. You can also see that it makes it appear that the mask is getting smaller. It actually isn't. But I can use that very subtly to soften the edge if I don't want the edge to be super hard edged. And even on something geometric like this, I may not want it to be, extra sharp edge. So that's the general idea. Now, of course, as I mentioned, the making masks, there's the planning part of it. And because I randomly chose this piece of footage, the color is completely all wrong. This looks totally phony, not only because it's person floating outside the window, but because the color is super saturated there and the colors inside are not, and it just looks off. So I made this choice so that I could highlight the importance of it. So when you're choosing your footage, you're choosing the two different pieces that you're going to be collecting yourself. You're aware of that. You're thinking, well, I don't want to choose something that's super saturated on the one hand and something that's not on the other hand. I don't want to shoot footage at night and then try to shoot footage during the day and try to combine them. That will look really strange. You'll want to find compatible stuff. It doesn't mean that you can't work to fix that, but you do want to find compatible footage so that it will look a little bit better. There are things you can do to make it look more compatible. But that is, again, something that you can choose to not do. You'll also see that I have this other flower here. Again, as I was building the set, I was putting this whole thing together. I was mindful of the window. I was mindful that I didn't want stuff blocking this window so much, because that would set up a whole nother sort of problem for myself. And that would be, it's not geometric. I'd have to somehow mask around these flowers. If I had the orchid scooched over so it was breaking this plane, so it was in the window, I'd have to mask very carefully around the orchid. Not impossible. It would just take time. It would just take a lot of time for me to get in there and do that. Excuse me. So you're making these choices about what you do and you don't want to do when you're making these masks. So as I'm seeing this mask, and if I want to edit it again, like get a hold of those little pins again, I come back over to the source window where I have the mask controls, and I just click on the mask itself. When I do that, you'll see over in the viewer that I have the points once more, and I can grab hold of them and I can start to move them around and make adjustments. So if I decide, well, instead of having it where it is, maybe I'll choose to put it here, and maybe I'll choose to put it, I'll put it where the glass is, not where the wood ends, that kind of thing. Maybe that's what I'll do. I still have this little bit of flowers to figure out what to do with, and I'll show you how that can work. Not so that you can make a mistake, but so that you'll know how to correct it, even just a little bit, if you are in that situation. So I'm zooming in so that I can see a little bit better. And so when you have something like this, it's basically a square. However, if I hover over it, you'll see that I have a pen that shows up. This pen means that I can click and add a point. And then I can click again and add another point, and I can start to draw effectively. And I can start to create additional points from which I can make effectively like custom mask. This becomes really complicated. Whoops. Really complicated if the thing you're doing this to is also moving, which I'll be demonstrating to the next one, which it is moving, but in a slightly less complex way. Slightly less complex way. It's a little bit difficult to do this with, there we are. So yeah, so that's basically the idea. That's done very quickly. Let me correct this over here before I leave. And then zoom back out. Grab hold of this guy and kind of fix him a little bit. And so you can see I can just very roughly go around and correct for that anomaly there. And hopefully it'll look a little bit more natural that way. I was able to sort of bump out over that. So you see, it's not the end of the world, but it will look much more natural if I were to have not, it would have been much quicker if I didn't have to do that. So if I don't have to do that, I don't. Now, another way to make it, these things combined to make them look a little bit more compatible, so that they look a little bit more the same, would be the color. So I could get in here and I could start manipulating the color of this, or I could start manipulating the color of that. Or I might have decided already, because maybe the client gave me these two pieces of footage and I have to work with them. Maybe I convinced the client then, well, I think we need to do something with the color then, because these two aren't going to look very good together. So one solution is to get rid of the color altogether, to make it black and white, or to desaturate it quite a bit. That will calm it down. To do that, we've done that before. The way we do it is we grab an adjustment layer. To make an adjustment layer, we go to File, New, Adjustment Layer. It creates this little pink highlighted basically footage, and you put it into your video. I'm going to zoom on in here because I have my settings very customized in PrPro, so it's kind of strange. Okay, so I have it there. And I'll pull this out. So an adjustment layer to start off is blank. There's nothing in it. It's just like, think of it like a piece of clear acetate sitting on top of your video. There's nothing there. When I click on it, you'll see it's blank. It's just black. If I go to Effects Control, I do have all the effects that you can do to normal video, but there's no video there to do it to. In order to make it do something, I want to put effects on it. So down over here in the browser, where all my other video stuff is, if I click on the arrow key, I can go over and get other tabs that you don't see here because I've got things compressed. And I go to Effects. I've got all sorts of choices here. I'm going to kind of close all these. So at first you might just see these presets, Lumetri presets, audio effects, and video effects. So we're talking about a video effect. So we'll click on video effects and it gives you all the different choices there. And then I can start to open these up and see what's in them. I can say, oh, there's levels. This is color correction. So that would say hue and saturation and brightness and contrast. Image control. Oh, hey, there's black and white. So if I want black and white, I can now make sure I have adjustment layer selected, which I do, and I click on black and white. And so now what I have is the video is now all black and white. And you can see how that right away makes it look much more compatible. It doesn't make it look real because it's not real at all, but it makes it look at least less phony. It makes it look less like wacky than it did. Now, you guys have been noticing that the video cuts off because it's shorter. The video of the woman is shorter than the video of me. I can make that adjustment as well. I haven't formally shown you how to do that. First of all, I want it to be, if I want it to be exactly the same length as the video of me, I need to know what the video of me is. So I will click on the video of me, and I will click on the keys Command and the letter R, as in Robert. And when that comes up, I'll get this, which is called the speed and duration. Now, there's other ways I can find it, but this was just a very easy way because I'm already here, and it gives me an opportunity to show you something else, where we're about to go anyway. So right here, you can see under duration that the video of me sitting drinking coffee is 1 minute, 20 seconds, and 18 frames. That's what that represents. 1 minute, 20 seconds, and 18 frames. This goes up to hours. So it could be 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 20 frames. So this is 1 minute, 18, and 20. Okay, so I know that exactly down to the frame. So now I click on the woman, and I, first of all, am going to get rid of the black space that was there because there was a little bit of black emptiness there. So got rid of that first. That's gone. Now I'm going to hit Command R again, but this time I'm selecting the underwater footage. And you can see this footage is 33 seconds and 22. So instead, I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to just type in a new duration, telling Premiere, I want, instead of it being what it was, I want you to make this video this particular length. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to slow down or speed up the footage based on what I'm putting in here. So I'm asking it to make the footage longer. So what it's going to do to the footage is slow it down. So the footage is going to look like it's even in more slow motion than it already is. And when I hit OK, you'll see now the video footage matches exactly the other. So that's a way of adjusting speed for video footage. It's also a way to calibrate things if you're really wanting things to be exact by the frame. So you can see now that I've got it, you know, she's now moving slower, but at least she's taking up the entire framework. Another thing that you know I might do is work on levels. You know, maybe adjust the brightness and the contrast of the overall video footage. I might add, for instance, some other effect like a gradient or something on top of here to make it look like glass. I usually will add a little bit of noise, which is a little bit of grain texture to almost all of my video footage when I work with it, because I feel that it gives it a little bit of a tactile feel. Video to me looks way too smooth for my eye. And so I tend to put a little bit of a tact to it. Anyway, those are all aesthetic choices. The basics are what I've just shown you, and that is you'll choose your video footage that you want to put the mask on. You'll go to opacity and choose which type of mask you're using. I just chose the Create 4-point, and then I drew a box around it, and then there you go. But what if the thing that you're doing, it moves? That becomes a little more complex, but certainly not impossible. So I have, for this second part, 2 pieces of footage. I have this fire from my fireplace here, and I also have footage of me opening the pocket doors in my room. So what I want to do is again something totally phony. And that is when I open these doors, I want the fire to be back there, taking up the whole space. So, you know, as I walk over and I start sliding this door, I want, instead of my couch and sofa and window to be back there, I want fire, the footage of the fire to be there. So what do? Well, what I first need to do is mask the fire so that I can see me underneath there. So I will do that. I'm going to click on the fire, and I'm going to go to Effect Control, And just as I did before, I'm going to choose the create 4-point because in this demonstration, I decided to make it as simple as possible. So by clicking on the 4-point, you can see once again, I've got a mask. Now, in this case, I want to keep this as the thing that I'm patching. I don't want to make it a hole. I want to keep the fire as the thing that I see. So this demonstration, I'm not inverting the mask. So you can see there's sometimes you want to do an inverted mask. Sometimes you want to do a regular mask. In this case, I'm doing a regular. When I was looking through the window on the previous one, I was doing a inverted mask. So here's what I'm looking at to begin with, the overall video footage. You can see, I'll go ahead and take this off, how I've choreographed here. So I'm walking over and I cross here in front of the doors. Now, my house is very old, and so nothing is square in the house. And so there's a gap there, and I'll have to deal with that. It would have been better if those doors had shut tight, but they don't. Anyway, because I crossed over here, I need the video of the fire, which is going to be subtly seen in here because there's a gap. I don't want it to start yet, because if I do, when I walk in front of it, the fire will be on top of me. Instead, what I need is for the fire to start as soon as my hand clears. So what would happen otherwise, if I put this on, as you'll see, is as I'm walking in front of the piece, you see now the fire is on top of me, right? Even if I created a really tiny mask here, go ahead and make the mask even smaller. If I grabbed a hold of these visor shapes and moved the mask really small, you know, just kind of bent it around and made it into this shape here, even if I did that, as I'm walking, if the mask is still there, as soon as I cross in front of the mask, the illusion is broken because the mask is in fact on top of the video, right? So what I need to do is identify the moment where I have cleared that area. So you can see my arm, and then right there at that frame, that's when my hand goes off of the center. So then I'm going to grab the fire footage and scroll it and make it start at that point. Only at that point will the fire turn on, basically. Now, the rest of my choreography, I deliberately stayed out of the way, as you'll see. I open the door. You see I did not grab the handle here, where my hand would be in the way. You'll see I walk out of the frame, and then I walk back into the frame and pull the other door. And you can see also that I'm not putting myself in there, so that I'm simplifying it. And then I walk back, still not doing that. So the rest of the choreography is fine. So I do need to do that, right? So the fire will start at that point. Now, what I need to identify is at what point is the door opening, because the door is closed right now. And at what point is the door going to be opening? So let's first of all start with when the fire actually will start, the moment the fire starts. So here's where the fire doesn't start. Here's where the fire does start. Now, what we're going to be doing is animating the mask. So the mask is on the fire clip, and it is revealing only parts of the fire. We're going to animate this so that the shape of that mask changes, so that we see different parts of the fire, and that will coincide with what I want you to see below it, which is me opening the door. Because I want it to look like, when I'm opening the door, that it's fire behind there. So what I need to do is start doing the animation, start creating the mask over time. And like just about everything in this feature, I can do it over time. So you can see when I made the mask again, mask, here's where it feathered. We talked about that. I can move that down to 0 for now. But also if you look right up above it, it showed mask path. And what that is that's the sort of animation portion. So if I click on the time, what it's going to do is it's going to give me those familiar pins that we've been using before, where we did a pin and then created the opacity. This is kind of the same thing. We're putting a point there. And once we put the point there, now I'm going to configure this mask at its starting point. Where do I want the mask to begin? See, you can see that this is starting to sound familiar because when we do other things like the regular fade in, fade out opacity, we do the same thing. We make a point, we decide what do we want it to begin, make another point, where do we want it to end, and then we mask in between. We're basically going to be doing that same thing. So I'm going to edit the mask. So I click on the mask itself up here. I then come on up here and I start to move this tool. And the reason I have this zoomed out is so that I can see the very bottom edges of the mask. Oops. So what I'm doing is I am making the mask very thin, very small, moving the little shapes around as carefully as I can, not to confuse them with each other and all of that. So it is a little tedious. It was a little difficult. So for all intents and purposes, just for time's sake, we'll say that that's good enough for us right now. Just so that because I could spend 20 minutes trying to get the starting point there. So I've got the starting point. So if the fire's not there, oops. I always do that. I do that a lot. I hit the when I'm doing these masks, where I mistakenly start to use the keys in the wrong time. So I'm going to click on the timeline and start to see where the mask starts. So here's what it looks like so far. So I would walk in, and so that doesn't quite look real, but we'll fix it in a moment. It looked like it just turned on, but we can fix that easily. I'm mostly concerned right now with the mask and the shapes. So now I need to identify at what point do I start opening the door. Right there. The door just moved. Okay, so that's another point in time that I need to identify. So I'm going to click. I'm just hitting the arrow keys one bit at a time, waiting for the door to move. There. Door moved right there. Just started to move. So I go just prior to that because I don't want to wait till after it started to move. I want it just prior to moving. Right there. Door moved. So just prior to that, then I'm going to put another pin there. Why am I putting a pin there? Because that's the starting point that I need the shape to start moving. Because as the door starts to move, I want the mask to grow and get bigger because the opening is getting bigger. Now, where do I want it to end? I want it to end at the exact moment that the door stops moving. So again, I'm down here and I'm click, 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 click. I'm not paying attention to me. I'm paying attention to the door, trying to identify exactly when the door stops moving. I can pinpoint it, I can adjust it a little bit later, but that looks pretty good. So I'm going to put a pin there. And so what that does is I've got the beginning point and the end point of the movement. Now I'm at the end point, and I'll click on the mask again to edit the mask at that end point. So I'm going to grab the shape and I'm going to move it over and effectively try and try and line it up. I say try. Oops. Oops. Come on. Hard to grab it. It's so small. There it is. No. One moment. Huh. Nope. Ah. Ah. There we go. That was not easy to grab. Okay, so I'm going to pull it over and match it. I'm sure I fiddled with the starting the points over there, so I may have to adjust those as well. So what I'm doing is I am trying to find the end point of the door as closely as I can. And as I said, nothing in my house is straight. And so therefore I know that not even the door is straight, because these doors are 125 years old. So the line here is not perfectly straight. So like I did before, because the line is not straight and there's a small gap here, you'll see as I zoom in, there's this little bit of light here. I'm going to use that visor tool again to then click and then close that gap a little bit, just like I did with a flower, just a little bit there. So that's the end point. Now that's going to give me the rough movement. And I say rough because it will be rough. Let me go ahead and fix the upper one, go back and fix this one over here, because I know I screwed that up. Trying to get it to begin with. There we go. So that's going to give me the rough shape. It's not going to be finished, because when I start to look at the movement here, I'm not moving the door consistently. I'm a human being, and I'm not pulling the door in an even, smooth manner. PrPro is going to adjust the mask in an even, smooth manner. So I'm going to have to make, some corrections as I go. Some pretty big corrections, but this will get me started. So as I scroll backward, you'll see what's happening. You see it's sort of following it, right? So as I open it up, it sort of follows, but you can see there's definitely gaps there. You can see that it goes too fast to begin with and then not slow enough. So how do we do this? So we again, I'm going to use the arrow keys to just start moving very slowly. And you can see right from the very beginning, the mask moves too quickly. If you notice the door, now you can't because I have the mask selected. There we go. Let me zoom in again. So as I start to move, you can see the sort of round end of the door gets covered up by the mask, because the mask is moving too quickly, and very quickly the brass handle gets covered. So I know that that's moving too quickly. So what I'm going to do is the door starts to move, and by the time it gets to here, I'm going to make a correction. I'm going to say, okay, you guys moved too quickly. So I'm going to back out again, and I'm going to make a point there, and I'm going to edit the mask. So I grab a hold of the shapes, and I just kind of remake the shape. I move the points in just a little bit there, and I move the points in just a little bit. Whoops. Move the points in just a little bit there, and zoom in, because now I have that center one to work with, and move this one in just a little bit. I might need to make another correction up top. And this is what I mean by you need to be patient. You have to pay attention. And this is in a lot of ways, this is animation, because you are animating a mask. So as I continue to open now, you can see that looks a lot better, but it still rushes it. So I'm going to continue to get to the point where still rushes right there. So I'll make another point. I'll again edit the mask and continue correcting it. So I'll move this back. so that I can see the door. I'll move the middle point. Whoop. Move the middle point. And I'll move the upper point. And this is really the work. This is how you end up getting an even and clean looking result. There's no fast way to do it. I mean, there is a way to do it that helps you do it a little bit more efficiently. You can see I'm still a little bit off there. So there's, I can continue to make these corrections as I go. So let's see, I was a little bit off there and I kind of come back, and so I'm off there. So this is it. This is making masks. And so eventually, after some time, I will get this to open up completely like that. Then I pull out of the scene and I come over here, right? So now I need to be able to do the same thing on this side, because clearly I don't want it to open and see that. So it's the same deal. I walk over and I'm gonna see, where does the door start to move? And it starts to move there. So I'm going to back up one, and I'm going to put a pin in. Now I'm going to find out where it ends. Where I stop moving the door. Right there. And I'll put a pin, and then I'll edit the mask, choosing the mask, grab the points, move them over, and move them over. Just very roughly. Again, I'm gonna be making all kinds of tweaks and everything like that to it. But again, generally, that is what you're going to wind up with. So as I go, I'm walking over, I've got the first one open, and then I pull this. And of course, as you can see, it's not perfect. So I would go back again and continue to put points in there and edit the mask and the shape to get it to be just right. Those are the two techniques that we're going to work with first. We're going to do the image in the window, and then we're going to do image revealed, basically. So we're going to do sliding, moving mask, and still mask at first. Some very simple things. So what I'm basically asking you guys to do is consider. I don't even need you to shoot yet, but I need you to consider what you're going to use. You're going to need to be able to have a window shot. You're going to need to have something outside the window and something that you're going to be seeing other than what is really outside the window. Then you're going to need something that opens, and inside there you'll reveal something. What is it that opens and what is it that you reveal? So for instance, maybe it is a cabinet door that opens, or a closet door that opens. Maybe you don't have pocket doors at your house. It could just be a regular door. It could be a garage door, looking from the inside out. All kinds of different things, but it will be a door that opens and it reveals a something. So those will be the two kind of technical experiments that we use to explore how to use these masks at first. So I don't even, like I said, I don't even need you guys to shoot it yet. You could if you wanted to start, but what I want you to do is to determine what you're going to use so that you can plan when you're going to shoot it and how you're going to collect it so that you can do your best job in those things. These two examples, let me reinforce, these two examples are like, I don't want them to be this, I don't want you to make them this crazy, wacky looking. I did this so that you can definitely see what I'm doing, not because this combination looks, really cool. That said, I'm going to stop share for a moment here and hide PrPro. Actually, wait a minute. I'm going to jump back on PrPro real quick. Hang on. Let me hide that one more time and share. Here we are. Yeah. Screen. What? Share the screen. So here in Premiere, so I did do a couple of edits where I spent a little bit more time working on it to get the basic kind of concept. Where I did a bit more work to create the opening. You can see I've created a little bit more of a combination where the fire is, making it black and white helps quite a bit. So it's a pretty much a straightforward situation there. And then here is what the window looks like with a bit of a cutout. I know that's probably pretty small. Let me go ahead and just show you the other. So I've got the fire door. There it is, better window. So what I did here is effectively masked around the flowers and also added a little bit of a gradient so that, and a little texture so that it looked more like you were looking through some glass outside so that it didn't look like she was just floating on top there. Slowed her down, increased the contrast here and there, played around with it a little bit. It still could use a little bit more work on the ends right in through here. I could adjust a little bit more.